a bit of overview of what we are expecting from this session today. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Over to you.
Thank you, Anda, and hello, everyone. Good morning to the one connected from Africa, and good afternoon to our participant in India. As Anda mentioned, my name is Mohammed, and since I joined ITC, I have been working on market access issues. So today, I hope I can share with you some useful insights on market access, and I will show you some information tools as well. So we have ITC information tool dedicated to market access. So I hope after this session, you will be able to better export and to advise exporters as well. Because as I understand, many of you are from trade support institutions. So before I start, again, as Anda mentioned, my colleague Paula, she is connected as well. She will be helping me deliver this session. So whenever you have a question, please feel free to write them in the chat. She will address them, and I will make sure to have regular breaks between each part of my presentation so we can get some more questions as well. Okay, so let me share my screen now to start with the presentation. So, as I mentioned, our session today is on market access concepts and information tools. And when it comes to market access, and today I'm going to take the example of exports of coffee. First, because I know it's a product of interest to many of you, and it's also a nice opportunity since today is what we call the International Coffee Day. So we will be focusing on exports of coffee, and we will suppose that we have an exporter from Vietnam and he wants to access the Indian market. So when it comes to market access, usually we have many questions coming from exporters. And the first one is always, how much do I have to pay to the Indian Customs Authority to enter the Indian market? So what about custom duties? It's not only about custom duties, but they might ask also about product testing. So do I need to do any testing for my product? Do I have to provide any certification like SPS certification? They might also ask about the possibility of entering this market. Are there any import restriction on my product to the Indian market? Also, are there any documents that I have to provide when I am crossing the borders in India? So these are some of the typical questions that we got from exporters. And let's define first what is market access. So I am sure many of you have a trade background, so you already know that when it comes to market access, we usually refers to conditions. So we talk about custom tariffs, which is a part of market access conditions, but we also talk about non-tariff measures. So non-tariff measures imposed by your own country, by the exporting country, and also imposed by the importing country. So here, for instance, we have an overview. So let's suppose that here we are in country A and we want to export to country B. So here as exporter, I have to think about tariffs. So how much I'm going to pay. But also I have to take into consideration the regulation imposed by my own country. So do I need to get an export license, for instance? And also, what about the importing country or the destination market? Which regulations do I have to comply with? So today we have 90 minutes for the presentation, and then we will have the Q&A session as well. So 90 minutes, it's not too much when it comes to market access because it's a huge topic. So we had to make some choices when it comes to what we are going to cover or present today. And we might not be able to cover some other aspects related to market access. So first, what we will cover, we will have two parts on theory and key concepts when it comes to non-tariff measures and tariffs. So both conditions when it comes to market access. So tariffs and non-tariff measures. And for non-tariff measures, we will focus on SPS, TBT, and rules of origin. And why are we focusing on these three? Because we know that exporters face most of the problems and challenges with these three measures. Also, we will be presenting two tools. So we will have live demo of market access map and e-ping. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session, but feel free, whenever you have a question, please write them in the chat. What we will not be able to cover, we might not have the time to cover all aspects of market access. Also, we might not be able to show all the features of these two tools. So I invite you to go through the presentation after the session. We will be sharing the PowerPoint with you. Feel free to browse our tools as well. If you have any question, you can always get back to us after the session. Also, when it comes to rules of origin facilitator, so this is a tool just dedicated to rules of origin. And I know that you will have a dedicated session on this in 2 weeks, so I won't show you this tool. But if we have some time, we can start talking a little bit about rules of origin. So again, just before we start, what are customs tariffs? As you know, custom tariffs are a form of tax or duty collected by the government of the imported country. Sometimes you might face duties also in your home country, which we call export duties. Okay. So when it comes to tariffs, we have different types and forms of tariffs. So we have first the ad valorem tariff. And ad valorem tariff, it's the most known type of tariff. So it's usually a percentage of the value of your product. So let's take an example. If we have a pair of shoes and the value is $10, and then there is an ad valorem tariff of 20%. So 20% for this value of $10, it's $2. So I will be paying $2 as duty in this example. But it's not always about ad valorem tariff. Sometimes we have different other types. And some of them we call non-ad valorem tariffs. So it's not anymore about the value of your product. And the first one could be a specific tariff. So again, let's suppose we'll continue with the same example. My pair of shoe, we don't care about the value anymore because we will be paying a fixed amount per quantity. And this is what we call specific tariff. So if your pair of shoe is for $10, $100, you will always pay $3, okay? And then we have compound tariffs. And compound tariffs, they are a combination between ad valorem and specific tariff. So in that case, you will pay a percentage of the value of your product plus a fixed amount. So in that case, 20% plus the $3. Also, we have a different type called mixed tariff. And the mixed tariff, in that case, the government of the importing country is making a choice between a specific tariff or an ad valorem tariff. So a country might decide that you have to pay 20% or $3, whatever is highest or whatever is lowest. This is up to the country to decide. Also, under the non-ad valorem tariff, we have technical tariffs. And technical tariffs, it's mainly about the characteristic of your product. So we talk about the content or the size of your product. So let's take the example of chocolate. A country might say if the fat content is above 30% of your product, in that case, you have to pay 9% as a duty or as a custom tariff. So this was the second group, non-ad valorem tariff. And then we have a third group, which is called tariff rate quota. So in that case, we have two rates. So we have a lower rate and we have a higher rate. So first, there is a quota that is going to be filled. And once this is filled, you have to increase the rate. So let's take an example to make it easier. If we are exporting our chocolate to Switzerland, for the first 300 tons, there is an inside rate and it's $0 per ton. So they are not going to pay any custom duty. Once this quota or contingent is filled, we have to pay a duty, and this duty is going to be $300, for instance, per ton. So I hope this is clear, and I added in the presentation the definitions that I just gave, so you can consult it after the presentation in case it wasn't very clear. So before I continue presenting concepts related to tariff, I will be showing you 5 poll questions. I think that you already had a similar exercise in the first session, so I hope you are now familiar with poll questions. So the idea is just to answer these questions. So you will see now in front of your screen, you have 5 questions, okay? And you need to answer these questions so I understand better what should I focus on in the next part. So the answers are totally anonymous. Feel free to answer all of them. And once you answer all of them, there is a button and it's called submit. You have to submit your answers. So I will be able only to know how many have answered these questions. I'm launching the poll now. If you have any question or if you don't manage to answer them, please write to us in the chat so we can help you with this. So now you should be able to see these 5 questions. So we have 5 questions. The first one is about the harmonized system. I believe during the first session on trade map and export potential, this was covered, but just to make sure that everyone knows about HS system, please, if you know the answer, choose it. If you don't know, there is no problem. I can go through this quickly again. Then we have a second question, and it's about tariffs. So which of the following offers a lower tariff rate? So the first choice is most favored nations, MFN tariff. Second one, preferential tariff, or I don't know. Then just to be sure we are all on the same page, do you know what a bound tariff is? If you don't know, feel free to say no. Then we have a fourth question. You benefit from duty-free exports to the EU. This means that in the EU market, you have a tariff advantage compared to your competitors from other countries. Do you think this is true or not necessarily? Then we have a final question. Do you know what an ad valorem equivalent or AVE tariff is? So these are the 5 questions. You need to answer all of them and then submit. So far, I got answers from 23 participants, so half of you have already answered the question. Please, I will be waiting for the others to answer them as well. In the meantime, Paula, let me know if we have any question that has not been addressed yet.
No, we are good for now.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Yes, so far 35 participants have answered, so we still have 10 more to answer, so we can end the poll. Okay, I think it's fine. Okay, so most of you have answered the questions, and I'm glad to see that most of you know what is the harmonized system, but it seems that 2 or 3 participants are not very familiar with it. So let me give you a quick explanation for that. So as you know, when it comes to international trade, we have a system. So it's an international system that we are using. And this international system is used to classify all traded goods. And we talk today about goods. So if you remember the question, the second choice was about goods and services, but I'm glad that most of you answered it's about goods, which is true. And today we will cover only trading goods. You will have another session in 2 weeks about trading services. So when we use the harmonized system, we use it for trade in goods. And the idea is that we have a code to present each product. And it's a 6-digit code or a 6-number code. So let's suppose that we are talking about oranges. Oranges will have the same code in Germany, in Uganda, in Kenya. So it's going to be the same no matter what. And we use this to allow comparison between products, so we know how, like, the total of exports and imports from this product, and for customs purposes as well, because it's easy in that case for the customs officials to know and to classify the product. So I can share my screen and show you something quickly on that. So I think this was the same slide that was shared with you during the first session. So as I mentioned, harmonized system, it's a system used by all countries when it comes to international trade. So we have 6-digit code to represent each product. So here we have, for instance, green tea, black tea, or black tea, different type of black tea. So we have 6 codes. And up to the 6-digit code, we have the same code or the same HS figure in all countries. But then after the 6-digit code, and this is important, we have what we call national tariff line. And national tariff lines, they can be different from one country to another because they might have different subcategory. So I won't go further with the HS code, just to be sure that we all know it, because this has been covered already during the first session. So what about the rest of the questions in the poll? So let's start with the question on bound tariff and applied tariff, because I saw that half of you are not very aware with what we call bound tariff. So as a WTO member, as you know, they have a lot of commitments. And one of the commitments is related to what we call bound tariff. So it's a commitment by a WTO member not to increase the duty beyond an agreed level. So it's a rate that you will never exceed no matters what. And it's the same, and you have a bound tariff for each product. So let's take a numerical example. If you are importing coffee, you have a commitment that you notify to the WTO not to increase your tariff beyond 50%. So we are sure that you will never increase the tariff on coffee beyond this 50%. So this is what we call the bound tariff. And you can always find this information on the WTO website. But are countries applying or imposing this bound tariff? So if my bound tariff is 50%, do I always apply a tariff rate equal to 50%? No. And that's why we have what we call applied tariff. So applied tariffs are the tariff applied in practice by customs administration. So I can have a bound tariff of 50%, but then when it comes to applied tariff, I can impose a duty rate of 20%, for instance. So this gives some flexibility to WTO members because they can go from 0 to 50%, which is a bound tariff, but at the same time, it gives predictability to exporters, because if I'm exporting my product to Germany now and they are imposing 50% or below, I'm sure that they will never increase it above 50%. So it can be 20% today, it can be 30%, but it will never exceed 50%. When it comes to applied tariff, there is also an important concept, and this was one of the questions: if an MFN is a lower rate or a preferential tariff offers a lower tariff rate. So first, MFN. So most favored nation, it's a commitment towards other WTO members. So I ensure that I will never discriminate between WTO members. And how is that? Because I will be imposing the same tariff rate on exports coming from any WTO members. So let's suppose that I'm exporting my coffee to Germany and I am from France. It's EU, so they have to impose 10%, for instance. Or let's take another example. So let's say we continue with the example of Vietnam. So we have coffee from Vietnam going to India. So, and India decides that they will impose 10% rate on my exports. So it's okay. If another exporter is coming from another WTO member, and let's say it's Colombia, they cannot impose a tariff rate higher than what was imposed on Vietnam or lower. It has to be the same. So MFN, I will never discriminate between WTO members. However, there are exceptions, and that's why I was talking about the European Union or about any other regional trade agreement. So we have the Mercosur in Latin America, we have EAC in Africa, we have SARC in Asia. So in that case, if I have a trade agreement with one of my partners, I can offer a lower tariff rate. And if I offer a lower tariff rate, it's acceptable by the WTO regulations. So in that case, I can impose a lower rate. Also, you know what we call the generalized scheme for preferences. So developed country might encourage developing countries to increase their exports. So they can offer them or impose a lower tariff rate. And this is acceptable as well. And in that case, it's going to be below the MFN rate. So here we have a numerical example just to make sure that we are on the same page. So first we have the bound tariff. We were talking about the 50%. So okay, bound tariff, I will never, as a WTO member, increase my tariff above that. Then we have a rate higher than that. And why? Because this country is not member of the WTO. You know, like some countries are not members of the WTO yet. So we have Ethiopia, for instance, we have Sudan, they are not members. So in that case, I can impose a rate higher than the bound tariff. Then we have the applied tariff, which is 10% in this example, applied to all WTO member, except if I have a preferential agreement, I can give a preferential treatment as well. And we had a question about EU. So if you are entering the EU market and there is no duty, so you will pay 0 duty free. Does this mean that you have a tariff advantage compared to your competitors? Actually, it's not necessary. Why? Because I might be paying 0%, but maybe our competitors are also not paying any duty. So I have a tariff advantage compared to my competitors when I'm paying less than them. So if we compare, for instance, between applied and preferential tariff, in case of preferential tariff, I'm paying 5%, which is better. I have a tariff advantage compared to other WTO members. But if we are both paying 0, then we don't have a real tariff advantage. So last question about concerning the poll was about AVE's equivalent, so ad valorem equivalent. So as you remember, when I presented tariffs, I mentioned that we have different types of tariffs, and one of them is non-ad valorem tariffs. So what we are trying to do in ITC, and I will show you this on market access map later, we are trying to converting or translating this non-ad valorem tariffs to an ad valorem value. Why is that? Because if we have $3 per pair of shoes, I don't really know if this is a high tariff or if it's a low tariff. And I'm not able to compare it with the 20%, which is the ad valorem tariffs. So what we do, using a unit value, so we use the quantity and the volume of exports and imports, we are trying to measure this in a percentage. So in that case, this is what we call ad valorem equivalent. So non-ad valorem equivalent, we present them in percentage, and when doing that, you will be able to compare between the different types of tariffs, and you will be also able to calculate an average. If you are interested in agriculture products, you can calculate an average of tariffs. So before we continue, I will go now live and present you where you can find information on tariffs, but just I'm checking again if we have any question regarding the theoretical part. Paula?
No, I mean, we had one, but it was already solved. So I guess you can go. No more questions have been asked.
So as you know, when it comes to tariffs, we have many sources that we can use to get information on tariffs. And one of them is market access map. So market access map, it's a huge database created by ITC. And what we are trying to do is just to present you tariffs for more than 200 countries. So now I will be sharing my screen again, but this time we will go on the website. So the website is macmap.org, and you will have the link in the presentation so you can check it later. Before I show you where we can find information on tariffs, let me show you some of the features of this tool. So first, and as for many ITC tools, it's available in English, French, and Spanish, okay? And we have also some information regarding data availability and the methodology. And why it's important to browse this, because when it comes to data availability, it's good to know our coverage. So if you are, for instance, interested to know about a destination market, do you have this data on ITC market access map? So what you need to know is just to go to the data availability, and you will see we have a map of the whole world, and we show what we have for 2020, for 2019, and for 2018, because we are trying to update our data each year. So we update it when we have a new tariff schedule of the countries, and this is usually in January, but sometimes we update it through the year, because, you know, some countries like Japan, for instance, they don't update their tariff schedule in January, but it's according to their fiscal year. So here you can find our data availability, and then you can also have a look at the methodology. So for instance, if you didn't really understand what I meant by ad valorem equivalent, you can scroll down here and you will see that we are showing what are ad valorem equivalents. We give a definition and we show you how we calculate them as well. Also in resources, you have the glossary, you have the FAQ in case there is a term that you don't really understand. Most of the features are available without creating an account. You might only need to create an account to download the data, but most of the other features, they are already available without creating an account. And as for other ITC tools, this is free of charge. Okay, so when it comes to market access map, we usually use the home page. Why? Because when we go through this home page, we will show you all the information that we have regarding market access condition. So we will show you tariffs, we will show you non-tariff measures, and we will show you trade remedies, which are part of non-tariff measures as well. But if you are interested, or if you are focusing on one part of the market access condition, then I invite you to go and check the access module, because in that case, you can select looking at custom tariffs, trade remedies, or export and import requirements. So export or import requirements, we are talking about NTMs. Okay, and then we have another module where you can compare between markets, competitors, and products. We have also a module that you can use to analyze trade agreements, and another module that is usually used by researchers about GTAB tariffs. So I am going to continue with our example. So we have an exporter from Vietnam, and he wants to export coffee. But what if I don't really know where I should go? Like, I don't know what market could be attractive and which market is offering me a lower tariff rate. So this is important. And in this market, do I have a tariff advantage compared to my competitors? I don't know this too. So what you can do is use the compare module. So when you use the compare module, you can compare between markets if you are not really sure where to go. So we click on markets, and here we have exporting country, destination country, and product. So exporting country, we said we are taking the example of Vietnam. So what you need to do is just typing the first few letters of the name of this country, and you have already Vietnam. And then destination country, we are not sure yet where we are going to export our product. So we will select all destination countries available in market access map. And now it's time to select my product. So as I mentioned before, the harmonized system, it's really important. We are using it in all of our tools to classify the products. So if you know the HS code of your product, it's good, you can type it here. But if you don't know, it's okay. You won't be able to know all the codes of the product. So you can start typing keywords. So you type coffee, for instance, for our example. And now, as you can see, we have a list of all products where coffee is used in the description. So it's a very long list. So it might not be easy to know your product using this look. So what you can do is to select advanced product search. So in that case, you will have a better view. So first, again, we type coffee, and then we click on search. So search, and as you can see now, we have a better representation. So we have again the same results. So all the products with coffee in the description. Okay. So where is my product? I start reading what we have here. So this chapter, the title is coffee. So probably my product is here. And then I go through this 5 description to check where is my product. So here we have coffee, and the difference between each of this description is that coffee for the first one is not roasted, not decaffeinated. The second one, it's not roasted, but decaffeinated. The third one, roasted, not decaffeinated, or roasted and decaffeinated, or others. So for today's example, let's suppose that I want to focus on coffee, not roasted, not decaffeinated. So now we know that we have the product code, which is 090111. So we will be using this code during the whole presentation today. So again, we go back, we are in compare module, markets, select the country, Vietnam, all, and then now 090111. Okay, so we have now, it's one product, it's easier. You select your product and you click on search. So if you start scrolling down, and a general advice while it loads, always before you start looking at the results, read again the title of this table, make sure you selected the right product, exported from Vietnam. So, okay, it's going well. This is the example that I want to use. So I scroll down, and here you have list of all destination available in market access map. So we have around 200 countries, and normally by default it's sorted in an alphabetical order. So we have Afghanistan, Albania, and so on. Then when it comes to the columns, the first one is the MFN tariff. Now we know what is an MFN tariff. If you don't know this or others, feel free to click on this eye icon and it will show you an explanation for this term, or again, you can go to the glossary. So we have the MFN, we have the effectively applied tariff. So the tariff that is really applied, because, you know, as we mentioned, we might have a preferential tariff if we have an agreement with this country. And then we have preferential margin, and it's just the difference between the MFN tariff and the effectively applied tariff. Then we have the tariff year. So the tariff year, this is when did we collect this data. So as I mentioned, for many of the countries, we have 2020, but some of them we have 2019, or in the case of Afghanistan, we have 2018. So this is a starting point. You know what was the rate in 2018, but before exporting, you need to do further research. You need to make sure that this is the rate applied in 2020, okay? And then we have the national tariff line. So national tariff line, they are the subcategory given by each country to this type of product. So we have, in case of Albania, 3 subcategory for this product, coffee, and then we have the HS revision, which I think it has been covered during the first session, so we don't need to explain it again, and we have the import value. Also, what you can do is to add some more indicators. So you can add the preferential tariff, preferential trade agreement, you can add NTMs, and you can add distance, or you can remove some of these indicators. You can also download this table if you want. But if here it doesn't, I think it doesn't give me an idea, so sorting this table in alphabetical order. So what you can do is, if you are interested, for instance, in the effectively applied tariff. So if there is a trade agreement and I manage to show that my product is originating from this country, and we will come to this later when we talk about the certificate of origin, maybe you are interested to sort the table from highest to lowest on clicking on this one. So if you click on effectively applied tariffs, you have the table. Now it's classified from lowest to highest. If you click again, it's sorted from highest to lowest according to the effectively applied tariff. So as you can see here, we have some countries. So for instance, in the case of India, normally the MFN tariff is 100%, okay? But the effectively applied tariff is 50%. So if I manage to get a certificate of origin of this trade agreement, I can pay less. So I can pay 50% instead of 100%. So this is in case of India. However, if I want to export to Bhutan, it seems that there is no tariff advantage when it comes to that, because the MFN tariff and the effectively applied tariff on my country is the same, which is 50%. So this is one of the view that you can use to look at this, but also if you want a better view, you can click on chart. And when you click on chart, you will have a chart showing by default 10 countries. So you have the applied tariff and you have the applied tariff and have the MFN tariff. If you want to add some countries, like for instance, India, you can click and type here the name. And as you can see, now we have India. You can always download this chart and include it in your reports if you want. There is even a better overview for that, which is the map. So first you need to choose protection measures, so MFN or effectively applied. Let's choose effectively applied. And if you go down, you will see there is a map. And how this works, it shows the tariff rate, and the darker it gets, it means that the tariff rate is increasing. So as you can see, we have some bubbles as well on the map because we are choosing other indicators. But if you want to have a clean map, you can say none. So in that case, it shows you only the average tariff rate. And you can see here, for instance, if we click on India, we have 50%, which was shown in the table. If you even want to focus on Asia, so you want to focus on your neighbor, since you are from Vietnam, you can click on Asia. And in that case, you can see we have only these countries. So in yellow, we have our country, which is Vietnam, and then you have other neighbors as well. So now I presented you how usually you can choose a market if you don't really have one in mind. But let's suppose that we already know that we have a buyer, and we will continue with the examples that I mentioned earlier. We know that I have a buyer in India. Okay, so in that case, I will go directly and choose this as a destination country. So instead of using the compare module, now I will go to access. I'm focusing on custom tariffs, so I will choose this one. And then for the destination country, now I will select India. Here is India. exporting country, we have our country, Vietnam. And then for the tariffs, we have data from 2019, but we also have data from older years. So if you are interested in historic years, I think maybe researcher might want to have a look at that. But for exporters, they're already interested to know what is imposed now. So now, I mean, what we have in market access map is 2019. So again, don't forget to do further research to make sure it's the same rate. So coffee, now we know the HS code of the product. So it's 090111. I have my product, I select it, and then I click on search. So we go down and we can scroll down and see the results. So as you can see, we have many products. Why? Because as you remember, it's not only about the first 6-digit code, but countries can use the national tariff line to have subcategories. So here you can go there and check. So as you can see, India has a lot of subcategory when it comes to coffee. So we have Arabica, we have Rob Parchment, and we even have some grades for this coffee. Maybe it depends on the size, maybe it depends on the quality of the bean. So let's suppose we will choose Arabica Plantation A grade. So I click on this one, and now you can see the results. So again, exported from Vietnam to India, tariff year 2019. As you can see, and as we saw in the table, when it comes to India, we have two rates. So we have the MFN duty, so the applied rate, and we have preferential rate, and now we know it's for ASEAN countries, and Vietnam is one of them. So if you manage to get a certificate of origin and comply with this preferential agreement, you can get a 50% tariff rate instead of 100. If you click on this triangle, you can get more information regarding this preferential trade agreement with ASEAN countries. So you have the rules of origin. It shows you the full text of the agreement. Even if we click here, you can see the trade agreement. You can also see the certificate of origin, so you get an idea about what you should provide when you are exporting to India to get this preferential tariff. So this was the part on how to find tariffs in market access map. I will stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to check again if you have any question, or we should move to the second part of the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, we had a question that if you want to add to my answer, which is what's the relevance of the number of national tariff lines in the HXS6 code?
Okay, sure. So first, we agreed that we have 6-digit code, which is the same across all countries, okay? But then it's up to the country to decide how many digits it will add to this product to define a subcategory. So when it comes to national tariff line, you can choose what you want in your country. So it doesn't have to be the same across all countries. And you can add 2 digits, you can add 4 digits, and even when adding 2 digits, the description in India can be different to the description in Vietnam. So when we talk about oranges, the first 6 digit is going to be oranges in all countries. But then if we add 2 digits, 3 digits, 4 digits, we can have different categories, because that's why we call national tariff line. So it's national, just one country is applying that, so it might be different from one country to another.
Yes, we have another question, and is in the last example that you provide about coffee, if
Yeah.
there is any way to find the difference between the different grades of coffee shown.
So as I mentioned, here we show you some of the elements related to market access. So this is a starting point, but then you need to do some further research. And one of them is about how India is defining the different types of beans. As we discussed, it can be different from one country to another since this concerns the national tariff line. So what you need to do to get in touch with the relevant institution in India, in our example, to check that. Maybe buyer, if you have a buyer, he's also aware of that, so he can help you with this.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have other questions or we?
Okay, we have one here that I will answer, which is if these tariffs are applied on countries or in export companies. So, well, if you want to answer, but basically these
Sorry,
are,
could you repeat because I didn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
If these tariffs are applied on countries or on companies.
So it's usually when we talk about this, we talk about countries. So it's applied on your country. So, and that's why we talk about the certificate of origin as well. So when it comes to tariffs, it's applied on your own country, and you have, and that's why sometimes you need to show a certificate of origin so the customs officials know if you are exporting from India or if you're exporting from Kenya.
Okay, no more questions. I will answer the remaining in the chat.
Okay, so if you don't have any other questions regarding the example and how to find information on on tariffs, we can move to the second part on non-tariff measures. Okay, so again, I will be sharing my presentation and start with this second part. So now you should be able to see my screen, but if it's not the case, please let us know in the chat. Okay, so the good news is tariffs are straightforward, they are easy to understand, and it's easy to find the information on market access map as well. But the bad news is this is not the end of the story. So when we talk about market access conditions, you remember that we said we have two groups. So we have the first part, tariffs, but we have also non-tariff measure. And for an exporter, from an exporter point of view, tariffs are the last thing to worry about. Like when I reach the destination country, I will be paying this tariff. But what if I cannot reach this destination in first place? So we have some prerequisites or some preconditions in order to be able to access a market. So first, I need to have a buyer. So I need to find a buyer who is interested in my product. Second, I need to comply with some mandatory requirements of the importing country. So this is what we call the non-tariff measures imposed by the destination. But we also sometimes need to comply with private standards, and I will come to this later. So private standards, there are requirements of the buyer. So I cannot sell my product if I'm not complying with this. Also, I need to get some documents in my home country. So I need to get an export license, for instance, in order to be able to export. So that's why we always need to look at non-tariff measures as well when it comes to market access. So again, I will stop sharing my screen before I continue with the theoretical part on non-tariff measures. I will be launching a poll with 5 questions as well. I invite you to answer all of them. Again, please feel free to answer the 5 questions and submit at the end. I will not see what are your answers. I will just know how many answered. So it's good to answer these so I know how I should continue. Okay, so now I will be launching the second poll. I think you should be able to see the questions now. So the first one is about the definition of non-tariff measures. So what are non-tariff measures? And you have 3 choices. Then you have a second question about non-tariff measures only refer to regulation of destination or importing countries related to export or import of goods. This is true, this is false, you're not sure. Third question, SPS measures are an example of technical measures, while TBT measures are non-technical regulations. True, false, not sure. Then, and this is just a guessing question, ITC has conducted business surveys in over 70 countries to identify NTMs that exporters find difficult. Which sector do you think is usually more affected by non-tariff measures? Agriculture sector, manufacturing, or both are equally affected? And then the last one on rules of origin. Rules of origin can be understood as the economic nationality of goods in international trade. True or false? I hope the questions are clear and you can see the poll. If not, please let us know in the chat. So far, I got answers from 7 participants. In the meantime, Paula, do we have any questions that we need to address, or it's okay?
It's okay.
Okay, good, thanks. So far I got 14 answers. That's good. I hope the rest are answering as well. So the first question, again, it's about the definition of non-tariff measures, and you have 3 choices. And the difference between the first option and the second one is, do you think non-tariff measures are always affecting trade of goods, negatively affecting, or it depends, it's not always the case, or no, this is not the definition of non-tariff measures? The right one is the third answer. So far, I got answers from 30 participants, so we're still waiting for the rest, 10 more participants, and then we can end the poll and answer these questions. And just to know as well, because I was asked to go slow during the presentation and to make sure that you understand everything. So if I'm going quickly or I'm going fast, let me know in the chat. I can be more slow if necessary. So I got answers from 36 participants. We are 48 answering the poll. So please, the rest, I'm waiting for your answers to check if you are all on the same page or not. Okay. I think most of you have answered now, so I can end the polling. Okay, so just to share with you the results now. For the first question, we have over 60% who said it's the first answer is the right answer. And I will come to this later and show you what is the right answer. The second one, non-tariff measures, you are not sure about the right answer. We have 3 participants who are not sure. SPS and TBT, we have some who believe the statement is true and half believe it's not, so we need to get back to that. For the guessing questions, most of you believe that agriculture and manufacturing sector are equally affected. And for the last one, most of you knows what is the definition of rules of origin. That's good. So that's reassuring. Let me get back to my presentation now and give you some concepts and check with you what was the right answer regarding the definition of non-tariff measures. So I shared my screen now. I hope you can already see it. So non-tariff measures. So what are non-tariff measures? So non-tariff measures, they are everything affecting trade except tariffs. So as the name tells, they are the regulations legally set by government on importing goods or on exporting goods. So we are talking about both. And when it comes to non-tariff measure, we believe that it's good to use this term because it's a neutral term. So we don't say that this will always restrict trade or have a negative impact on trade. Why is that? Because usually non-tariff measures are imposed for very valid and legitimate reasons. So if you think about SPS and TBT measures, what is the objective? The objective is to protect human health and to protect plant and the environment. So if we have a measure on the maximum limit of residues, the objective is it's a very legitimate objective. So, and then if you think also about rules of origin, the idea of rules of origin is to get a better rate, so a preferential rate. So we want to increase exports and we want to increase international trade. So when we talk about NTMs, we usually say that they might have a negative impact sometimes, but it's not always the case. And they are in place for very legitimate reason. And that's why we need to make the difference and we need to understand the difference between NTMs and NTBs. So NTBs, or what we call non-tariff barriers, they always have a protectionist or discriminatory intent. So they are in place to restrict trade. And in that case, they will always have a negative impact on trade of goods, but this is not the case of all NTMs. Another important information when we talk about NTMs, remember the figure that I showed earlier during the presentation. You need to comply with regulation in your home country and regulation in the destination country. So when we talk about NTMs, it can be in your home country and it can be in the importing country as well. And sometimes you need even to comply with the regulation of a transit country. So let's say I am in India and I want to export to Vietnam, but to do that, I have to go through a third country. And let's take a very random example. Maybe it's not the case. I have to go through Nepal, for instance. So if I have to go to India, I need to comply with the regulation of the importing country, but I need to comply also with the regulations of the transit country. So if I am asked for an SPS certificate in the transit country, I need to provide it, even if I'm going to the importing country and they don't ask for that. And another important concept that you need to be aware of when it comes to NTMs, it might be difficult to comply because the measure is very strict. So the measure itself, it's very complicated, and that's why exporters are not able to comply with it. So if you are not able to comply with the regulation, it can be because we can start thinking about NTBs, and maybe it's very strict for some discriminatory intent, or maybe companies, they don't have the capacity to comply with the regulation. And in that case, like the government is supposed to deliver some capacity building and help companies comply with this regulation. However, this is not always the case when we talk about trade obstacles. So sometimes companies are not able to comply with NTMs because of what we call procedural obstacles. And procedural obstacles, they are the practical challenges or the administrative hurdles. So sometimes I can get the certificate of origin, like I can comply and get this certificate of origin, but because of high cost or very long time delays, I will not be able to comply with the measure. And that's why we talk about procedural obstacles, so administrative hurdles. Another important concept when it comes to trade-related obstacles are standards. So standards, they are not NTMs, because again, NTMs are the regulation set by the government and imposed by law. But standards, and we have different types of standards. We have public standards, so standards that are created by international organization. If you think about the Codex Alimentarius, so if you are familiar with that, these are some guidelines regarding food safety and good practices. So they are not imposed by the law, but maybe you have to think about that because your buyer will not accept the product unless you comply with that. Also, we have some private standards. So we have private standards, and these standards are created by NGOs. And again, maybe your buyer is asking to comply with the fair trade standard, or in case of coffee, we have coffee practices. If you don't comply with these private standards, you will not be able to sell your product. Okay, so these are the terms related to trade obstacles. And just so you know, for the NTM, we have also a classification, because, you know, we are talking about a lot of measures, and to be able to understand them in an easier way, we have a classification. You don't need to learn it by heart. You just need to know that there is an international classification for non-tariff measures. We have measures imposed by the importing country or the destination country, and we have also measures imposed by exporting countries or the origin country. And also we have what we call technical measures and non-technical measure. I will come to this later when I talk about TBT and SPS, because it seems you are not all familiar with regarding the difference of both. But before I show you that, and before I go live again and show you the information that we have on non-tariff measures in market access, I think you might be interested to know about the business perspective, since you are most of you are advising exporters. In ITC, we have done many surveys. We have done surveys in 70 countries, and we interviewed 30,000 companies on non-tariff measures. And when we do this kind of surveys, we are trying to understand what are the challenging NTMs, or what are the problems faced by companies when they are exporting or importing, because we have a lot of measures, but we are not sure which are more challenging for exporter. And just so you know, we have done these surveys in your countries. So we have done surveys in Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Ethiopia as well. And later I will show you some of these results. So when we do these surveys, we are trying to check with companies which are the challenging measures in the destination countries, in their home countries or exporting countries. And we also ask about the administrative hurdles when it comes to compliance with non-tariff measures. So in one of the questions we asked you, what do you think? Are agriculture exporters or manufacturing sector more affected by NTMs? And the answer is all exporters are affected by NTMs. And this is according to the surveys that we have done in many countries. But when we talk and when we compare between agricultural sector and the manufacturing sector, we see that exporters from the agriculture sector are more affected than manufacturing sector. And why is that? Because when it comes to food, we always talk about SPS measures, so food safety, and countries are very strict when it comes to food safety and the safety of consumers. That's why agriculture sector face more problems when it comes to NTMs. Another important question could be who's applying these challenging NTMs. So one might say it's OECD countries, because developing countries, they might be imposing a lot of challenging NTMs. Okay, but what about your regional partners? Like usually we have trade agreements with neighbors, so we are trying to do this to have less problems and more trade. So is it the case, or companies are complaining about regional partners as well? What about other developing countries, and are exporters facing problems in their home countries? The answer is yes. When it comes to agriculture, OECD countries, they are imposing around 40% of the NTM burdensome, but also companies comply about regional partners. So we have trade agreements with some partners, but we still face many problems. Also, they have some problems with other developing countries, and this is important home country. So when it comes to agriculture as well as manufacturing, companies are facing about 1/4 of the problems in the home country. So what are the main challenges? You remember at the beginning of my presentation, I said I will be focusing on TBT, SPS, and rules of origin. And that's because, as you can see here, for agriculture, we have around 70% of the challenges related to technical measures, so SPS, TBT, and also conformity assessment. So for companies, it's more challenging to show compliance with the regulation than the regulation itself. And when it comes to manufacturing sector, we have 1/3 of the problems related to rules of origin. What about the problems in the home country? Because we said 1/4 of the problems are related to export-related measures. Companies complain about export charges and taxes, export prohibition, certification, inspection, and getting an export license as well. And remember, when we talked about NTMs, we said that sometimes it might be challenging to comply with a measure because the measure is very strict. And here you can see that for agriculture and for manufacturing sector, it might be challenging to comply with the measure because of the regulation itself, but it's more challenging to comply with the measure because of procedural obstacles. So you see like around 60% of the problems faced by manufacturing exporters is related to procedural obstacles. So what procedural obstacles are we talking about? It's mainly high fees and long delays. So this accounts for most of the problems, but we also have some administrative burden. We have lack of facilities to do some testing, and we have some other problems as well, which make exporting a challenging experience for companies. So quickly, as I told you, we have done surveys in your country because you might be interested to know, okay, in my country, do exporters face the same problems? Yes, actually, we got same results in East Africa. So companies are saying 70% of the problems are because of foreign regulation, but 1/3 is related to regulation imposed by our own country. Most of the problems are related to SPS, TBT, and the conformity assessment with this regulation, as well as the rules of origin. And most of the challenges are problems because of the related procedural obstacles. So I hope this is clear. Just let me know, do you have any question, or I should continue with one example?
We have no questions so far.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I will continue and I will show you an example of challenging NCMs. So it's an imaginary example, but it would be good to have a look at that so you can better understand how exporters experience challenging NTMs. So let's suppose that we are an exporter of fresh food or processed food. So we are from the agriculture sector and we want to export our product to the UK. So before exporting, I need to comply with the regulation of my home country. So one of these is to get an export license. So how I can get an export license in my country? First, I have to go in person to the Ministry of Agriculture. Why? Because I need to get an approval. So I need to get an approval. Do we have any food shortage in the domestic market, or it's okay to export my product? So I have to go to get this authorization, and then I go and submit my documents at the Ministry of Agriculture. Then I go back, I go home, I wait for a few weeks until I get an answer from the Ministry of Agriculture. I go back again to the Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, can I export my product? Yes, and you have our approval. Okay, this is set for a very legitimate reason, but it's not the end of the story. I need now to get the export license. So I go to the Ministry of Trade. So I go to the Ministry of Trade to issue the export license. I submit the approval that I got from the Ministry of Agriculture, and all of that I have to do it in person. Then I go home, I wait for the approval of the Ministry of Trade and the issuance of the export of license. This export license has to be signed by the minister. So we have to wait because maybe he's sick, maybe he's not available at the moment. So I wait for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks. And then the minister signed off this approval, this export license. So I go again to the Ministry of Trade. I have now my export license. I take the export license, I take my product, and I go to customs to start exporting my product. But when I go there, customs, they want to make sure that you have an original document, because they know it's not easy to get an export license. So we want to make sure that it's not a forged document. So customs have to get back to the Ministry of Trade. They want to check with them, is this a valid document? Yes, it's a valid document. Finally, now you can export your product. So as I explained, all these requirements are set for legitimate reason. It has to be organized when it comes to export, but from an export perspective, this is hard, this is time consuming, and we don't have any predictability. So we don't know when we can get this export license, which means that I can even lose my buyer before I get this export license. So final message, the general message that we get from our exporters when we do the surveys, they want clarity, because there are many regulations and this might lead to confusion, and especially that we have many related procedures as well. Second, they want consistency, because sometimes the practice on the ground differs from what is written in laws. Also, they want procedural efficiency, because high costs and time delays might push them not to export. So before I go online and another live session on market access map, do we have any question, or we can go now and present you how to find the information on market access map?
No questions in the chat, at least.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I share my screen again, and this time market access map. So you remember we have several modules. Now we are interested to know about export and import requirements for my product. So here we choose the access and export and import requirements. We will be using the same example. So we will be using the example of exports of Vietnam to India. So requirements, I want to know first the requirements of the importing country. So I want to know the regulations imposed by India on exports of coffee coming from Vietnam for the product. Now you know that we have our code, which is 090111. I click on this one and we click on search. So now we have the regulatory requirement or the non-tariff measures. Again, for my product, this is the right product exported from Vietnam to India. NTM classification, NTM revision of 2012, NTM year 2019. So 2019, as I am always saying, please, before you export, make sure that for 2020, the measures are still the same. Maybe there are some updates, or maybe one measure is not in place anymore. So first takeaway, there are many measures imposed. So we have 58 measures imposed by India on my product. And this is the list of the products, of the measures. I will not go through each of them, but what you can see is that these measures are classified according to the NTM classification. So we have A for SPS measures, and we have chapter B for TBT measures. You don't need to learn it by heart, because even if you don't understand one of the measures, so for instance, special authorization requirement for SPS, I don't really understand what is that, you can always click on this icon and you will get more information about this measure. So let's take an example of a non-tariff measure. So let's talk about labeling requirements. So if you click here, you will get more information about the 4 requirements, the 4 labeling requirements imposed by India on my product. And here you can see that we have a description for each of this measure. So let's focus on the first one. So first, every package of food shall carry a label specifying the month and year in capital letters up to which the product is best for consumption. The use of any colorants in food must be clearly labeled in prescribed size, dimension, etc. So what if I want to know more information about this regulation? All you need to do is just to click on this plus sign and you will get more information. So first we have the legislation title. We give you a summary of this legislation because, you know, legislations, they might be very long documents. So you need to know first a summary about it. We include the information on the implementation authority. So you can get in touch with this implementation authority in case you want to make sure that the measure is still in force, validity date, and we also give you information about which countries are affected by this measure. So for India, all countries should comply with this regulation. If you want to get additional information about this measure, I invite you to check this document or click on the link and it will open the original law talking about the labeling requirements. So as you can see, this measure was put in place in 1954, but they have, of course, some revision, and the last revision was in 2004. You have here the content, and if you want to look for the information on labeling or packaging, you can use the option Control F, and in that case you can start typing labeling, for instance, and you can see that part 7 of this regulation talks about packaging and labeling of the food, and you can scroll down to get more information about this regulation. So these are the regulation imposed by India. So on this product, but sometimes you might have regulation imposed on all goods, and this is interesting to see as well. So as you can see here, if you scroll down the table, you will see import requirements applied to all goods, and you have information on this TBT measure. So this is one of the regulations that you have to comply with no matter what you are exporting to India. So we saw the measures imposed by India, but what about the export related measures or the measures imposed by Vietnam on its own exports? To have a look at that, all you need to do is just change the criteria here. So instead of importing country, we will choose exporting country. And then we have to choose our destination again, India. Exporting country, we have the exporting country, which is Vietnam. And we select again our product 090111. And you click on search. If you scroll down, you have here regulatory requirement, but now we are talking about export requirements. So we have 5 requirements imposed by Vietnam on exports of coffee to India. And the same you can do here. You can check these measures and you can open this page if you want to get more information or even if you want to see the regulation itself. So this is how you can find information on non-tariff measures on market access map. Do you have other questions, or we can move now?
Yes,
Yeah,
they are asking you to please explain the slide of e-ping again, if that's possible.
E-ping.
Yeah, exactly.
I will go to
Yeah,
e-ping.
yeah, that's one of the questions. That's the only question. The other ones are solved in the chat.
So now I think it's clear what we have in market access map. Now, first, I will talk about a few concepts related to SPS and TBT, and then we can move to e-ping. So let me share my screen again. So share. Now you can see my slides. So what about SPS and TBT? So remember, we had a question about SPS and TBT in the poll, and what you need to know that when it comes to non-tariff measures, we have two big groups. So we have technical regulations and we have non-technical regulations. So technical regulations are regulations related to the product specific characteristics or the production process. So we talk about the product itself. So we talk about the size of the product, we talk about the content of the product. So in that case, these are technical regulations. And technical regulations also include conformity assessment procedures. So if, for instance, we have a measure that we want to make sure that we don't have a lot of pesticides or we don't have a lot of toxin in the food product you are exporting, in that case, you need to do a test. So the test will be a conformity assessment procedures to show compliance with this regulation. So when it comes to technical regulations, we have two groups. We have SPS and we have TBT. So both of them are technical measures. And SPS, the objective is to ensure food safety, protect human, animal, and plant health, while TBT, they are related to the product characteristic as well, but it's for other reasons. So we have technical measures for national security reasons or for consumer safety reasons. So I remember in your baseline test, you had an example of TBT measures. So seat belts. Seat belts are an example of TBT. While non-technical measures, they don't refer to product specific properties. So they refer to trade requirements. So we have custom formalities, we have rules of origin certificate. In that case, these are non-technical measures. Okay, so this is all you need to know, the difference between technical measures and non-technical measures. Here you have some more examples if you want to look at this later. So I already gave some examples regarding the residue limits in seafood, or even like if we need some vaccination for the animals, or if fumigation requirements. Conformity assessment, I give you the definition already. It's any procedure used directly or indirectly to determine that relevant requirements are fulfilled. Okay, and we have different components of conformity assessment. When it comes to conformity assessment, you might have testing, inspection, or product certification to show compliance with a certain technical regulation. So if you don't have questions, I will show you now e-ping, because I have a question regarding e-ping already. So what is e-ping? As you know, the WTO members, they have some commitment. And one of the commitment is to notify the WTO about any new technical regulation. So SPS or TBT. If you are going to put in place a new technical regulation, you have to notify the WTO. And in general, we have a lot of technical regulations. So we have, in 2017, for instance, we had 4,000 new technical regulation. So the members, they send notifications to the WTO regarding this regulation, but it might be very difficult for a small exporter or for anyone to keep track of all these regulations. So that's why we use the WTO notification that members send to the organization, and we put them in what we call e-ping. So e-ping, in that case, is an alert system for SPS and TBT notifications. And the objective is to enable the private as well as the public sector to keep track of new SPS and TBT notification. So I will show you how you can go through this notification and how you can check the information available, but also I will show you how you can create an email alert. So once there is a new regulation in the market of your interest or imposed on your product, you can get a direct email with this regulation. Okay, so let's go live and look at e-ping. But before that, do we have any question or we can go live?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, thanks. So e-ping. Let me share my screen again. So here, share the screen, and we have. So now we are not going to look at. So e-ping and e-ping. So it's epingalert.org. So this is the site to look at the notification of SPS and TBT. So as you remember, we mentioned that in market access map, we are doing our best to cover all the non-tariff measures, but it might not be, it's impossible to update it every day whenever we have a new regulation. So that's why it's good to use e-ping as a supplement resource. So in that case, you get notification and you stay updated and alerted regarding the new technical regulation in the market of interest. So as for other tools, if you feel like you have a question or there is anything that it's not clear, please do check the reference materials. Otherwise, you can go directly and search notifications. The tool is free of charge as for the other tools. You can even check this information without creating an account. And I will show you later how to create an account in case you want to get information and you want to get email alert with the new regulation. So first, if you are looking for notification, you can look by member. So by WTO member, you can here type India, for instance, and it's automatically updated and you will see all the notification of India. So what you can do is to select if you are interested only in SPS measures, TBT measures, or if you want to look at both. You can get the data or the notifications from any different date. So for instance, if you are interested from the beginning of this year, you can choose in the calendar 1st of January 2020. For the products, you can type your product here, so coffee, for instance, and you will start getting all the notifications on this product, or you can choose the HS code if you know. Also, you can search the notifications by objective and or by keywords. And when it comes to keywords, given the current times of COVID, I think you might be interested to keep track of all the notifications related to COVID-19. So in that case, what you need to do is to type here COVID-19 SPS and TBT or COVID-19 TBT, and you will get all the notifications related to these temporary measures. So this is how you can search for notifications. And just to take an example, as you see, this is very updated. So we got new notifications from several countries yesterday. We got from Chinese Taipei, from Thailand, from Brazil. So let's take one example to show you the information that we have. So first we have the notification sent by Thailand. So we have this information, and it reads that it's related to a temporary suspension of importation of live poultry from Australia to prevent an outbreak of an avian flu. So this here you have the objective and you have the keywords. If you want to check more information about the notification, you can click here. And here, so we have additional information, notifying member, you have description of this notification, you have the date of the notification, which was the 30th of September. You have the product affected, so live poultry, and you have the HS code, objectives, keywords, and you have the regions or countries affected. So it's an SPS regulation, and Australia is the only country affected by this measure imposed by Thailand. If you want to look at notification sent by Thailand to the WTO, you can click on that and it will open a Word file for you showing the notification. So you have notification, and here you have more details about this notification and the regulations that just took place on poultry coming from Australia. So this is the first part related to how to search for notification on ePing. What about getting emails? So getting email alert if you are interested in a specific market or certain product. So in that case, you need to create an account, and you can create an account by registering here. So you start with personal information, some basic information, title, first name, email, and your organization and country. Then you start the filtering. So here you can select the product of interest. Otherwise, you will get all the notification on all products to all destination, or you can start typing here coffee, for instance. You can also type the HS code. Now we know the code of our product, so 090111. So we select a product. We can select more than one product, so we can select fish as well if we want. And then what we can do is to scroll this one and check for more information, for more products if you don't know really the code of your product, okay? And then when it comes to notification, if you are interested only in SPS measures or TBT measure, you can check that and select it. Notifying member, okay, I'm exporting to India, I want to get information on India, I'm exporting to Kenya as well, I'm exporting to Uganda too. So I will choose all these countries, and then you have the option of setting your email alert preferences. So do you want to get an email daily? You want to get it weekly, or you don't want to get any emails at all? You will go to the tool and check for information. You can do that. And all you need to do at the end is just to submit and create your account. And from now on, you will be getting notifications regarding the new SPS and TBT regulations. So this is what I wanted to show you on ePing. I will stop sharing my screen. I want to know if you have any questions.
The chat, we don't have any questions.
Okay, and Lilian or Anda, you can help me. How much time do we still have?
6 minutes from my side.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So I will just show you quickly what some concepts related to rules of origin. You will have already a presentation on that in 2 weeks, and you will see the rules of origin facilitator. I also invite you and remind you that we have YouTube channel with many videos on how to use the tools, including market access maps, the tools that I presented today. So feel free to check this information, and also you can send us emails if you still have any question after the session. So quickly, I will talk about rules of origin. So we are done with ePing. Rules of origin. So why is it important to talk about rules of origin? And I will show you the example of the nationality of fish caught in international waters and how we can determine the origin of this fish. So first, when it comes to rules of origin, what are the rules of origin? And as you rightly answered in the poll question, they are the economic nationality of goods in international trade. So when we go to customs, we have to show the nationality of our product, and we always have one origin to each product, and we cannot have more than one. So this is important to take into consideration. So we cannot say that a product is made in the world. It will always be made in one country when it comes to custom declaration. And another important question related to rules of origin, why is it important? It's important because, as you know, to get some preferential treatment. So in our example today, when we talked about coffee, if the coffee is from Vietnam, I will be paying less tariff, but it's not that I will say it's from Vietnam and that's it. I need to show a certificate of origin. Otherwise, every exporter from any country will say it's from Vietnam just to pay less tariff. Also, non-preferential tariff. So sometimes we might not get any preferential tariff, but we still need to provide a certificate of origin. Why? For trade statistic purposes. So for a country might need to know from where they are importing or exporting their product, and that's why they ask for a certificate of origin. Also because it might be related to other trade policy measures. So if we talk about trade remedies or tariff rate quota, it's important because if we are imposing an anti-dumping duty, for instance, on one country, which is Kenya, for instance, and I am from Ethiopia, so I will say, okay, no, I'm not from Kenya, so I don't need to pay this anti-dumping duty, etc. But why it might be complicated when we talk about trade agreement? Because each trade agreement has its own sets of rules of origin. And first, let me show you how we determine the nationality of a good. So first, we have two groups. We have wholly obtained goods, and we have substantial or sufficient transformation of goods when we have some non-originating components. So let's start with wholly obtained goods. It's a very straightforward example. So if I have an apple, and this is the same for most agriculture goods, if I have an apple and the apple has grown in Spain, then The origin is Spain. That's easy, that's straightforward. But what about products more complicated? So processed food or even manufactured goods. So we can take also an easy example to explain that. So if I have some non-originating ingredients, so let's say we have oranges, and the oranges have grown in Spain. But I now have a orange juice produced in Kenya. Could I say that this is a product originated in Kenya? Yes, if I manage to change the tariff heading. So tariff heading, we are talking about the harmonized classifications, or harmonized system classification again. So I manage to change the chapter of this product. So now it's a different product. In that case, I can say that it has originated in my own country, Kenya, even if I got the oranges from Spain. Also, we might talk about value addition. So for the same example, if I have orange juice and the value of this orange juice is $10, let's say it's $10. So can I say that it has originated in Kenya? Yes, if only the non-originating ingredient cost is less than 50%. So if the oranges originating in Spain value is $2, in that case, we can say that this has originated in my country, Kenya. Also, some technical requirements. So if I pasteurize the milk in Ethiopia, I can say that it has originated in Ethiopia, even if this was produced in another country. Okay, so this is how we define the origin of a product. I hope this is clear. Let me know if you have questions.
We have some questions about rules of origin.
Yes.
So the first one is, how would you indicate the origin in a situation where you import a product and then you re-export it?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned, first, it's going to depend on the product. So if it was a product wholly obtained in the first country, so if it was wholly obtained in Spain, you didn't change anything when you got it from there, and you are using it in Kenya, then this is a product originating in Spain. So if you don't make any sufficient transformation, it's not going to change the nationality of the good. If you change this apple, I'm taking very basic examples, but it can be more complicated. And if you have time, I can show you an example. So if you manage to change the product, so it's not apple anymore, but it's apple juice. And this apple juice, you change the heading, so it's a new product now, so you can say that it has originated in Kenya, or the value of the non-originating ingredients, which is apples themselves, they constitute less than 50% or 40%, it depends on the agreement, you can say that it has originated in your country. So it depends on the trade agreement. I think I don't want to be over time, so if you have some time and you are interested, I can show you an example. So you can tell us now in the chat if you have 2 or 3 minutes, I can show you an example of this.
Yes, people says yes.
Okay. So yeah, I won't take so much time, but let us think about this example. So let me share my screen. This one. Yes. So if we have a fish that was caught in international waters, what is the nationality of this fish? And this might not be easy to answer because the straightforward answer. It depends from one trade agreement to another. So it's going to be different according to the rules of origin of each trade agreement. So let's take an example of agreement between EU and Algeria to see how they define the nationality of the fish caught in international waters. So this is an article from the agreement, and it says the following shall be considered as wholly obtained in the community, which is EU or Algeria, if the products of sea fishing taken from the sea outside the waters of the community or Algeria by their vessels, or products made aboard their factory ships. So here they say that if it's me, I'm one from EU or Algeria, and it's my boat, and it's my fish, so it's my work that I did over the boat, then this could be a product originating in EU and Algeria. So you might think that this is the end and okay. But if you look at that, their vessels or the boat, what do we mean by that? Is it that straightforward? Maybe we need to look about how they define their vessels. So when it comes to vessels, the vessels are considered from the community or Algeria if first they are registered or recorded in the EU or Algeria. Second, which sail under the flag of the community or Algeria. Then we need to have owned to an extent of at least 50% by nationals of the community, or by the company with head office in EU or in the EU in Algeria. The managers, the chairman, and the community members, they should be members. They should be members of EU or Algeria. And what else? We need to make sure that 75% of the crew of this ship is from Algeria or the EU to say that this is originating from the EU or Algeria. So it's not as easy as we thought, because we have a lot of things, and what could be problematic is show me how you can prove this, how you can comply with that. So let's take an example. If, for instance, we have 10 crew members on this ship and 8 out of them are from the EU. So in that case, we can say that we are complying with this. But imagine if this ship was sailing in December this year and it's back in January 2021. And unfortunately or fortunately, we have 2 crew members out of the 8 from the UK, so they are British. So now in January, we have less than 75% of the crew from the EU. So in that case, is it an EU boat or vessel anymore? It might be not. So that's why, as I mentioned, it depends. It depends. Rules of origin, they are different from one trade agreement to the other. And you need to check that before start exporting if you really want to get preferential, the preferential tariff related to this agreement. So that's what I wanted to show you today. I'm here if you have any questions. I hope this has been useful.
Yes, we have a final question about the rules of origin, and it says that if there is any harmonized value addition criteria that it's internationally established in case there is no trade agreement between two countries.
Harmonized value addition criteria internationally in case there is no trade agreement. So again, as I mentioned, the idea of rules of origin and the nationality of the product is to get a preferential tariff. But sometimes, even if you don't have a preferential tariff, you still need to provide a certificate of origin. So you need to provide a certificate of origin because maybe the country has some other objective, such as collecting trade statistics. So in that case, for sure, the country will tell you how you can provide and which certificate of origin you should provide. So you need always or sometimes to provide a certificate of origin, even if there is no preferential tariff that you will get from this country. And in that case, you should check with the country how you can comply, because again, rules are different from one trade agreement to another. Do we still have any questions?
No.
Okay, so just before I finish, I want to let you know that we have an exercise as well that will be shared with you. So Liliane will get in touch with you to share with you the exercise. I hope today's session was useful. Please, if you have any feedback, feel free to let us know. Browse our tools and let us know as well your feedback. We are trying to improve what we deliver, so your feedback is highly appreciated. Thanks. I give the floor to Anda.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's been a really wonderful session today. I hope I share not only my opinion, but also of participants as well. And we can see it's been a very interactive with question and answer. Thank you, Paula, for taking care and providing answers to the questions that were addressed. Thank you all for not only joining, but also attending, being with us throughout. I hope it's been a useful session for you. As Mohammed said, Lilian will share with you the homework for today, as well as the link for the last session. Today's session is also, it has been recorded and we'll share with you next Tuesday to ensure that you will also have this recording so you can go back at your convenient time. And please do use ITC tools and browse, as Mohammed said. Just it will kind of give you a broader understanding. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next Tuesday at the same time. Good afternoon and happy weekend to all. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.